A small fragment of fossilized bone rests inside a dimly lit laboratory drawer, a relic recovered from a limestone quarry in southern Africa back in the 1920s, belonging to a child who died over 2 million years ago, at the tender age of 3 or 4. When the anatomist Raymond Dart held this tiny skull up to the light, he noticed something chillingly precise. 2 matching puncture marks, punched cleanly through the delicate bone of both eye sockets, perfectly mirroring the spacing of the lower canines of a massive prehistoric eagle. This young ancestor was not killed by a falling rock, and they did not succumb to disease. They were targeted from the sky, struck down in a flash of feathers, and carried away into a high nest, to be systematically devoured exactly the way a modern eagle handles a small monkey or a young antelope today. For the vast majority of our evolutionary timeline, humans were not the grand authors of the natural world. We were not the undisputed lords of the savanna, and we were certainly not the apex predators of the landscape. We were simply the meal, a fragile, soft-skinned primate running through a landscape dominated by absolute nightmare. The animals hunting our ancestors were not merely dangerous encounters. They were hyper-specialized killing machines that had spent millions of years perfecting the art of taking down large mammals, each one arriving on the scene with an anatomical toolkit engineered by natural selection for the explicit purpose of tearing apart something roughly our size. Among these terrors stood the scimitar-toothed cat, known to paleontologists as Homo therium, a 600-pound mass of pure muscle equipped with long, serrated blade-like canines and exceptionally powerful forelimbs built for wrestling massive prey directly to the earth rather than chasing it down across open ground. This ambush specialist rarely wasted energy on a long chase, choosing instead to wait. In dense cover near the vital watering holes, its prey had no choice but to visit, closing the distance in a short, explosive burst of speed and delivering a single, devastating bite that ended a life almost instantly. If you managed to slip past the reeds without alerting the scimitar cat, the open plains held an entirely different category of danger of the short-faced bear, a genuine hypercarnivore that stood well over 11 feet tall, on its hind legs and weighed close to 2,000 pounds. Unlike modern bears that satisfy their hunger with berries, insects, and the occasional fish, this prehistoric monster ate almost nothing but fresh meat, possessing unusually long legs built for sustained, high-speed running that would leave a fleeing human with absolutely zero chance of escape. The night offered no sanctuary either, because the darkness belonged to giant prehistoric hyenas that were considerably larger, faster, and more powerfully built than any scavenger alive today. These pack hunters could generate a terrifying bite force well over 1,000 pounds per square inch, more than 6 times the crushing capacity of a human jaw, allowing them to effortlessly splinter thick leg bones to extract the rich marrow inside. And their ancient dens have been uncovered, littered with the chewed, completely stripped remains of prey animals, many times their own size. Add to this terrifying menu the presence of dire wolves running in highly coordinated packs, dozens of individuals strong, American lions that dwarfed the modern lions of Africa, giant cheetahs built for blistering speed across the open plains, and enormous, flightless terror birds that stood taller than a grown man, wielding massive, hooked beaks strong enough to crack open a human skull in a single, fluid strike. In the dense, shadowed forests, leopards were perfectly adapted to snatch sleeping primates right out of the tree branches under the cover of night, while massive crocodilian ambush predators lurked silently beneath the surface of the exact watering holes early humans had to return to every single day, meaning there was no safe hour, no secure terrain, and no landscape that wasn't actively claimed by a predator with vastly superior natural weapons. It is a reality that should genuinely humble our species, especially when you look at our closest living relative in the animal kingdom, the common chimpanzee, which pound for pound possesses roughly 3 times the raw physical strength of an average adult human, carries a formidable set of sharp canine teeth built for violent confrontation, and can scale 30 feet of a vertical tree trunk in a matter of seconds. Yet, despite all of these natural defenses, chimpanzees are still regularly hunted and killed by leopards in the wild today, which leaves our own physical package looking completely absurd by comparison. Because humans were noticeably slower than chimpanzees, vastly weaker than chimpanzees, and lacked even a basic set of fangs to defend themselves once cornered. Our night vision was incredibly poor, Our sense of smell was entirely unremarkable. Our hearing gave us no defensive edge over a stalking cat. And our unique choice to stand upright made us highly visible from immense distances across the open ground. To make matters worse, our infants were born essentially helpless, completely unable to walk or escape danger for roughly a full year, and biologically prone to crying at the exact moments when absolute silence was required to survive. By every standard measure of evolutionary biology, our soft, slow, poorly armed species should have been wiped off the face of the earth within a handful of generations. Yet every single apex predator on that terrifying list is now completely extinct, while we are still here, a contradiction that forces us to look past individual survival and ask what our ancestors figured out how to do collectively. The very first breakthrough that permanently altered this lopsided equation was the mastery of fire, a monumental event documented beautifully at a site called Wonderwork Cave in South Africa, where archaeologists uncovered burned bone fragments, deep ash deposits, and structured hearths dating back roughly 1 million years, marking some of the earliest solid evidence of controlled flame anywhere on Earth. Fire completely rewired the logic of prehistoric survival, because a burning fire creates an invisible, highly effective safety perimeter stretching roughly 30 feet across, a glowing boundary that most large predators will not cross, due to a hardwired, instinctual avoidance response to open flame that still shows up in wild lions today. This primitive chemical wall gave our ancestors usable light long after sunset, provided the physical warmth their thin-furred bodies desperately needed to survive cold nights, and handed them an evolutionary gift far more valuable than either: extra time. Before the control of fire, the arrival of nightfall meant finding a hiding spot and staying completely motionless in the dark until sunrise. But with a crackling hearth, a group suddenly gained several additional hours every single evening to manufacture tools, plan their movement, and communicate with one another. Fire also unlocked the transformative power of cooking, which breaks down tissues so that cooked meat delivers dramatically more usable calories, while requiring far less digestive effort from the body than raw meat, a nutritional windfall that eventually supported the growth of a larger, highly energy-hungry brain that could solve survival problems exactly when it mattered most. Gathering around a shared flame after dark also fundamentally reshaped the social fabric of the human group, providing a nightly window for extended, face-to-face communication that the frantic tasks of daytime survival never allowed, an architectural shift in human behavior that researchers increasingly believe mattered just as much as the physical protection the light provided. But fire alone could not secure the planet, which brings us to the second major weapon in the human arsenal: sheer physical endurance. While a pursuing predator like the scimitar-toothed cat could reach sprinting speeds that no human being could ever dream of matching, no large carnivore on that ancient list possessed the ability to keep moving for hour after hour under the blazing heat of the midday sun. Humans leveraged this limitation by developing an extraordinary strategy known as persistence hunting, where instead of attempting to outrun an animal in a short sprint, a hunter tracks a prey animal at a steady, relentless jog, never allowing the creature to rest, recover, or find shade. The targeted animal will repeatedly sprint away, stop to cool down, and then find itself pushed into motion again by the steady arrival of the human tracker, completely unable to regulate its internal body temperature on the move the way the human body can through the process of sweating. Humans carry an extraordinary density of sweat glands compared to almost any other mammal on Earth, an anatomical design that allows us to shed heat effortlessly while running, so that after hours of constant movement, the prey animal eventually collapses from total heat exhaustion, allowing a person to simply walk up and finish the job from a safe distance. A healthy human adult in reasonable condition can sustain a submaximal jog for the better part of an entire day, a feat that almost no four-legged mammal can match once the ambient temperature climbs, turning the hottest, most exposed hours of the day, hours that were once deeply dangerous, for a soft-skinned primate, into our single greatest hunting advantage. This physical endurance was paired with an obsessive capacity for pattern recognition, a cognitive trait that early humans weaponized into a highly sophisticated tracking instinct. The human brain became a master at reading the landscape, understanding that a slightly bent blade of grass meant a heavy body had recently passed through the brush, that disturbed soil indicated a predator digging for food, and that the precise shape and depth of a print revealed the exact species, its size, its health, and how recently it had moved across the ground. Early humans turned this intense tracking data back onto the monsters that were hunting them, learning that scimitar cats favored specific ambush spots near the water at dusk, that cave lions avoided fires without exception, and that certain bears defended fixed, predictable territory. All of this life-saving knowledge was meticulously observed, logged in memory, taught to the younger generation around the nightly fire, and compounded further with every generation that followed, so that a single skilled tracker could look at a faint depression in dry mud and correctly read the hidden movements of the wilderness, providing an early warning system that meant the difference between a safe camp and a fatal ambush. Yet, the absolute greatest weapon in the human story, the one that truly separated us from every other creature on the planet, was our capacity to care for one another. At an archaeological site called Dmanisi in the country of Georgia, researchers recovered the skull of an early human ancestor who had lost every single tooth years before their death, beautifully dated to roughly 1.8 million years ago. In a wild world without modern tools, losing your teeth meant chewing raw meat or tough plant fibers was entirely impossible. Yet this elderly individual survived for a meaningful stretch of time after losing their capacity to chew, which proves that someone else in the tribe was actively preparing soft food or feeding them directly. No apex predator does anything remotely like this. A toothless lion or a broken bear simply dies alone in the bush, but a toothless human was carried and protected by their pack. This same profound empathy was uncovered at Shanidar Cave in Iraq, where a Neanderthal skeleton dating back 60,000 years showed signs of a severely broken arm, total blindness in one eye, and advanced painful arthritis. Having survived to an age that was considered genuinely old for the time, this individual could not have hunted, could not have fought, and could not have contributed to the physical defense of the group for years. Yet his community kept him alive regardless, feeding him and protecting him, because they valued the wealth of accumulated tracking and predator knowledge locked inside his memory. A living library of data that only grew more precious the longer he survived, to pass it down to the young. This level of social coordination completely transformed the nature of the hunt, turning human groups into strategic tacticians who could use complex verbal language to plan multi-step ambushes ahead of time, coordinating their movements to drive a massive animal toward a natural drop-off, position armed hunters below, and cut off every single escape route in advance. And then, everything changed with the invention of the throw. Somewhere around 380,000 years ago, wooden throwing spears recovered from a site in Germany show clear evidence of deliberate aerodynamic shaping, meticulously weighted and balanced to fly true across real physical distance. Launching a projectile with lethal force and pinpoint accuracy turns out to require an extremely specific piece of human anatomy, an elastic energy-storing shoulder joint that functions almost like a built-in slingshot, storing massive rotational energy in the tendons and ligaments during the windup and releasing nearly all of it at once during the throw, an anatomical quirk that other primates simply do not possess. This unique shoulder allowed a fragile primate to launch a heavy spear hard enough to pierce the thick hide of a 600-pound cat from a completely safe distance, neutralizing the deadly reach of its claws and teeth without ever stepping within their strike zone. This throwing advantage kept improving across generations, leading to the development of the spear thrower, a simple hooked lever that extended the effective length of the human arm and multiplied both the speed and range of a thrown projectile far beyond what muscles alone could achieve. Some ancient groups took this biological warfare even further, coating their spear tips and arrow points in toxic plant extracts or venom harvested from dangerous animals, ensuring that even a shallow, glancing wound delivered from a safe distance would slowly incapacitate a massive beast. A creature that could easily shrug off a physical puncture and keep fighting suddenly found itself facing a chemical injury that quietly worsened over the following hour, giving a small group of human hunters the option to simply retreat, wait safely in the brush, and return once the animal was no longer a threat at all. Roughly 50,000 years ago, this gathering storm of human technology hit a critical mass, and as Homo sapiens began spreading out of Africa in massive numbers into Europe, Asia, Australia, and the Americas, a striking global pattern began to unfold. In region after region, the largest apex predators on the landscape quietly began to disappear, The scimitar-toothed cats vanished from the earth. The American lions disappeared, short-faced bears ran out of road, and the woolly mammoths, giant ground sloths, and terror birds all followed the exact same downward trajectory into the silence of extinction. While there is still an active, ongoing scientific debate over how much of this megafaunal collapse was driven by human hunting pressure versus a rapidly shifting global climate, the continental timelines show a devastating correlation, where the arrival of coordinated, tool-using human hunters consistently marked the end of the line for the largest, slowest reproducing giants of the animal kingdom. We did not merely figure out how to hide from the monsters of the dark. We outthought them, we outlasted them, and in the end, we effectively erased them from the face of the planet entirely. Evolution handed each predator a singular, imminent physical advantage like brute strength or blinding speed, but it handed humans something categorically different: adaptability itself, the capacity to learn from a single mistake and ensure the next generation never had to learn it the hard way. A collective strategy that turned our physical shortcomings into our greatest evolutionary triumph, and the sole reason you are alive to tell the story today.